Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. And as always, I'm your host, the Game Master. And today we're going to be talking about Namor the Submariner. But before we get into that, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, and as always, be sure to leave us a comment, as that really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. We've got a great community here, and it's all thanks to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive into the adventure. The prologue to today's story takes place in 1920, when a group of human beings journey to the South Pole aboard a ship known as the Oracle. The Oracle came from America on a scientific expedition, and the captain of the ship was named Leonard Mackenzie. He and his crew had made their base on an ice floe directly above an underwater city. During the weeks that followed, the Atlanteans that lived in the city were bombarded by powerful explosives. Their structures were demolished. Husbands, wives, mothers, and children were slain in droves. The surface dwellers were blasting the Atlanteans out of existence with their scientific investigations. Soon, many more ships arrived, and finally, in desperation, the Atlantean elders ordered that an army be formed. A beautiful Atlantean woman named Fen was selected. Of all the Atlantean women, she most closely resembled the appearance of the surface dwellers. She's taken before the king, who orders her to be a spy and to work her feminine wiles to the advantage of the Atlanteans. And so it was that on that very night she was found in the ship's hold, hunched up and shivering. Not realizing what she was or why she was there, and thinking of her as one of their own, the crewmen hurried her to the captain. Since she was insufficiently clad for the Antarctic climate, they gave her heavier clothing, in which she felt like she was suffocating. They fed her some of their food, which made her violently ill. And although she didn't speak English, the captain took pity on her and offered her comforting words. In a short time, she learned his tongue, and as time went on, she and the captain fell in love and were married. All the while, though, she was giving secret information back to the Atlanteans. And before long, she gave birth to a son, whom she named Namor. And that brings us to the main body of today's game session, which takes place in the year 1939. It begins on a salvage ship known as the SS Recovery. The crew pull a deep sea diver named Rod Nelson back up to the main deck of the ship, and he reports that he explored the wreckage in the depths below and found the safe they were looking for, but someone already beat him to it, and the safe had been emptied. And what's stranger still is that whoever did it left a knife behind, and it's yet to rust, suggesting that this didn't happen very long ago. But there have been no other salvage ships in the region, so things don't add up. Captain orders Nelson to go down again and to try to discover the identity of the mysterious party. So they send with him a crewman named Carly as well. As they explore the wreckage of the ship, they stumble upon Namor the submariner. He sees them and thinks they are ponderous, and given their metallic diving suits with the spherical metal helmets, he thinks they're robots. He sees they have an acetylene torch and thinks it's some sort of fire weapon. When he sees their air hoses, he refers to them as the robot control wires. So he cuts through them with a knife. He cuts the radio wires as well as the acetylene torch tube. He swims over to one of the men and grapples with him. Namor's strength is monstrous, according to the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game by TSR. So with great ease, he grabs the diver's helmet and crushes it with his bare hands. Air bubbles rise to the surface, and the crewmen aboard the SS Recovery see this and realize their man is in trouble. Another crewman named Anderson begins to suit up. Before he can get down there, though, Namor crushes the other man who's already on the ocean floor. Once Anderson is lowered down, he finds his fellow crewmen have been slain. Frightened and risking the bends, Anderson signals the captain and asks to be pulled up right away. They begin to pull him back up, and Namor watches from the darkness of the sea, too deep for the light to reach him. As soon as he's on board, Anderson tells the captain what he found, and the captain orders that they leave. But again, Namor attacks, this time using his great strength to push the ship into the rocks, tearing the hull. Namor brings the bodies of the deceased crewmen back to the underwater city, where finally their helmets are removed. Namor is shocked to learn that these are surface dwellers and not robots. He knows that his own father was a surface dweller, so he has many questions about human beings. But Fen, his mother, tells him that his father was the only decent human being in existence. She tells the story of how the men from the surface bombed the Atlanteans in 1920. His mother explains that it's taken them years to build up a race to avenge the brutal harm that was done to them in 1920. And now, since Namor is the only one who can live underwater and on the land, and because he has the strength of 1,000 men, it's his duty to wage war on the surface world and avenge those Atlanteans that the surface dwellers have slain. Namor and his cousin Dorma go to the Cape Anna Lighthouse in Long Island, New York. Namor knocks on the door, and when a man answers, Namor uses his monstrous strength on the man. Another man attacks Dorma, and Namor takes him out too. A third man fires at them from a window high above, and Namor flies up there and deals with him as well. 4 more men show up, and as before, Namor leaves no survivors. A biplane flies overhead, and Namor grabs Dorma and flies up to the plane, where they grab the pilot and throw him out. Which brings us to the epilogue of today's adventure. The Submariner, carrying out his vow to destroy the human race because of the injustice done to his people, is warned. The Human Torch, who is now a member of the New York Police Department, has been ordered to put an end to the Submariner in his reign of terror. The Submariner scoffs at the Torch's abilities, daring him to come out and fight in the open. The Torch, after repairing some of the damage done by Namor, finally catches up with him. And as the Submariner attempts to wreck the George Washington Bridge, the Human Torch stops him. After a brief struggle, the Torch's heat drives the Submariner back into the water, where Namor returns to a vehicle of his called the Aerial Sub. Taking one of the high-pressure air tanks used for motor combustion in the sub, he heads for the Statue of Liberty. No sooner than he arrives, the Human Torch appears. Torch throws a fireball, but Namor dodges it. Namor then uses the air tank to temporarily put out the Human Torch's flames. Namor then punches the Human Torch, sending him flying. The android comes to before he hits the water, and he flies into the city. Namor goes to a television studio where he threatens to destroy a technician if he doesn't broadcast what Namor has to say. Namor challenges the Human Torch, who tracks him down to the studio. Namor flies to a reservoir, but what he doesn't know is the water here has chlorine in it. Namor dives into it, and right away the chlorine begins to weaken the Submariner. Meanwhile, the Human Torch covers the water's surface with flames, not letting Namor out. Namor passes out. When Namor wakes up, the plane is flying overhead, so he flies up to it and throws the pilot out. The Human Torch goes to the police station, where he asks the forensic scientists what sort of chemical would destroy Namor. They suggest sulfuric acid. An attractive female officer by the name of Betty Dean tells the Human Torch he can't do that, but he ignores her. The Human Torch flies to a chemical warehouse where he finds several large glass containers full of sulfuric acid. To his surprise, Namor comes here as well. So the Torch throws the glass containers of acid at Namor, missing him. Namor, in turn, gets his hands on a huge glass container and uses it to contain the Human Torch. It doesn't take long for the Human Torch's flames to use up all the air in the jar, leaving the android helpless. Namor gets away, and Betty Dean shows up to rescue the Human Torch. And that was it for that game session. We hope you enjoyed hearing about it. If so, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, and as always, be sure to leave us a comment, as that really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. We hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you in the next video.